I'd like to hear from the audience, actually, and I'd like to respond to any questions or queries you may have. So if anyone would have any questions, let's proceed.
Any questions from anybody? Yes?
I'm sorry, but I got here a bit late. I've had a very busy day. I had to go to church this morning. I had a brothers meeting at 7:30. But I got here, I think the film was starting. And I went to the science function here, then I went to do things in Westfield, but I got here. And I've heard of this thing, but today I also like to acknowledge all the people here, the very intelligent people. I look around, I'm just over there, but I can see it, very intelligent. They come here to support this dreadful what's going on in China, in communist China. But could you just explain briefly to me what the Communist Party is doing, and yeah, that's all. I'm very tired. I just want to know what they're doing. They're all just a brief.
Sure, if I can address that. I think it helps to understand communism in China, because Chinese culture doesn't have communism. Chinese culture does not have communism. It came from Russia back in the 1920s, and then the party took over in China at the end of 1949. And the system is just a total control. So what happened for other
I
practitioners?
actually come from Ukraine, but I'm first generation Australian. My people come into Australia, I'm getting that.
Well, thank you. So for communism in China, it could not, initially it's accepted Falun Gong. Falun Gong was taught in 1992, first taught in 1992 in May, and it was taught to the public. And then in a few years it became very popular because it was reconnecting with China's traditional culture. Qigong exercises, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. These Gen Sha Ren in Chinese, these are foundational principles going back in Chinese history. So this was a big challenge for the Communist Party. It accepted Falun Gong for a few years. It was registered under the Chinese Qigong Association. Mr. Li, who's the founder and teacher, he was actually supported by the government for 2 years to travel around teaching Falun Gong. In 1995, he was invited by the Chinese ambassador to teach at the embassy in Paris, teach Falun Gong there. So initially there was this acceptance, even by the government, but when it became so popular, and the Communist Party hardliners realised this was reactivating traditional Chinese culture, where cultivation, meditation, following good principles, wanting to be a good person, understanding that connection of human life to heaven and the universe, then it's too much for them. Because if you know communism, it's founded on lies, and followed up as teaching people to be good, to be honest, to be true. So this was something that the party decided it couldn't tolerate. But then the organ harvesting manifested a few years later, because the party thought it could eradicate Falun Gong in a few months. Normally it's very efficient. If it decides to get rid of somebody, a group or an individual, that's it, they're gone. But it could not suppress the spirit, as you saw in this film, the spirit of people who practice Falun Gong, because they are connected with something greater than themselves, some part of Chinese tradition. So the Communist Party, led by Jiang Zemin at that time, he took this idea to this. They already took organs from prisoners on death row, or whoever they needed. But initially, back in the 80s, they only really served the higher-ups in the Communist Party and anyone connected with that. But as it developed, as they wanted to get rid of Falun Gong practitioners, and there was millions incarcerated, then this extension of organ harvesting, they just decided to use Falun Gong as an organ bank and just kill people off to order. And from then, in 1999, this expanded. And that's $1 billion industry.
What's this organ? What did they actually do, the Communist Party, to
Well,
what do they do? They cut organs out or what?
Yeah, well, you have to understand it's a state-sanctioned crime.
How'd they do it? Did they arrest you and then they take you and do it?
Yeah, you actually, well, they can just detain you. They don't even have to arrest you. But they get the...
Why do they want to take the organs? Is it punishment?
Well, as it explained in the film, it's a way of getting rid of people. They want to get rid of Falun Gong practitioners. But if you can make money out of selling their organs, then that's another evil extension of what the Communist Party's thinking is.
It must be, therefore, the organ.
It is.
That's another question.
Thanks very much. We'll just move on to introducing actually somebody in Australia here that has witnessed the persecution. So I'd like to invite Shelton to come up and share her experience. So she'll be sharing what happened in Chinese, and I'll be translating it into English.
大家好，
Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
翻译活在法轮功学员计划的一点苔藓。我是陈晓，我和母亲谭德珍是1996年12月学法轮功的，因按真善忍的原则，在生活工作中实践做好人，提高信心。用半职的我们，通过坚持练5套功法，3个月后，身体所有慢性疾病等不治而愈。我一家人都学法轮功，从此我们远离疾病，身心健康，为国家节省大量的医疗费。
My mother, Tan Zhen, and I began practicing Falun Gong in December 1996. By following the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance in our daily lives, we transformed ourselves both physically and morally. Before practicing, we were reliant on medication, but within 3 months of doing the 5 exercises, our chronic illnesses vanished without treatment. Our entire family took up Falun Gong, and from then on, we enjoyed robust health, sparing the state significant medical costs.
99年，中共党魁江泽民一言堂迫害、打压、剥削我们的信仰自由，因此我和母亲去北京上访，用亲身体验去证实法轮功是利国利民的好功法。按真善忍做好人，简真话没有错，而遭到中共非法劳教2次，我的母亲劳教3次。
In 1999, then CCP leader Jiang Zemin launched a brutal campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, stripping us of our freedom of belief. To defend our right to practice and to share how Falun Gong benefits society, my mother and I traveled to Beijing to appeal. For simply upholding our faith and speaking the truth, we were illegally sentenced to forced labor camps. I was detained twice, and my mother 3 times.
我们在2000年至2004年被关押劳教所期间，因不放弃信仰，不写诋毁、污蔑法轮功的文章，而遭到长期几个月被关进禁闭室洗脑，24小时不许睡觉，各种泯灭人性的酷刑与体罚，在精神与肉体上遭到极度的摧残。我和母亲都被迫害成皮包骨的模样。
Between 2000 and 2004, while imprisoned in labor camps, we refused to renounce our beliefs or write statements slandering Falun Gong. As punishment, we endured months in solitary confinement for brainwashing, sleep deprivation for 24 hours at a time, torture and inhumane abuse that shattered us physically and mentally. We were reduced to skin and bones.
在里面，每年劳教所专门为被关押的几百名甚至上千的法轮功学员进行全身器官体检，1年进行抽血，共练3次。但我们从来没有看到体验报告，我们深深体会到中共政府把我们按真善忍做好人的简真化的法轮功学员当成阶级敌人、社会人渣一样无情的摧残抛弃，并没有珍惜善待我们的生命。
The labor camp also subjected hundreds to thousands of Falun Gong practitioners to forced medical examinations, including full body organ checks and blood draws 2 to 3 times a year. We never saw the results. My mother was once told her organs were perfectly healthy, only to later realize these exams were likely preparation for live organ harvesting. The CCP treated us, people striving to be kind and honest, as class enemies or social scum, discarding our lives without remorse.
我妈妈曾经对我说，体检医生说她所有器官都连好，而这样回来后才知道验血是为了活摘器官做准备的。如今我母亲谭泽珍已77岁，因坚持修炼法轮功，不放弃信仰。2020年12月，她和朋友徐善平阿姨向民众讲法轮功真相，而遭到中共非法绑架、关押、判刑。
In December 2020, my 77-year-old mother was kidnapped again for distributing materials about Falun Gong's persecution. She was sentenced in secret. We never received a court notice.
至今没收到法院通知书。她被剥夺知情权、探视权，亲朋好友不知道判多少年，关在哪里没有见过她，也不知道她是否还活着。
Her whereabouts remain unknown. No visitation rights, no communication, no proof she's even alive.
去年7月，在明慧晚上得知，我妈妈一起被关押的徐善平阿姨从广西省南宁市女子监狱出来后，2天去世的消息，令我震惊万分。她的家人曝光她被迫害成皮包骨，生命垂危时才放她回家。她是被迫害而死的。
Last July, I learned from Minghui.org that Xu Xiangping, a fellow practitioner imprisoned with my mother in the Nanning Women's Prison in Guangxi, China, died 2 days after her release, emaciated and near death. The authorities only let her go when she was beyond saving. Her family confirmed she was tortured to death.
我知道后非常痛苦，我和我的家人都担心我的妈妈的安危。年迈的父亲已81岁，因多年思念担忧而痴呆不能自理。每年中秋节，我爸爸都在期盼着我妈妈好好的活着回来，吃上一顿团圆饭。这也是我家最大的心愿。
This news devastated me. My father, now 81 and suffering from dementia after years of anguish, still waits every Mid-Autumn Festival, hoping my mother will return for one last reunion meal. That is our family's deepest wish.
祝大家认清中共的邪恶，远离中共，让大家都有美好的未来。祝大家节日快乐！谢谢大家。
Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone will stay far away from the CCP. And I still live in constant fear for my mother's life, and the CCP's cruelty has already stolen one life. How many more will follow? Thank you for everyone for coming.
Thanks very much for sharing the story. Next, like.
I believe it's Courtney, right?
Yeah.
Would like to speak as
Yeah.
well.
Hello everyone. Once I watched the movie, I just had no word. I just felt like I had no word to say, but just by good friends, others just encouraged me to say something. So, thank you. First of all, thank you, organizers, everyone attending for coming here, and thank you so much for inviting me to part of the team. As you know, that I tried to get into Parliament, and I always, I've been close with the Falun Gong associations. I understand every moment, every story, every family that encounter these problems with the CCP overseas in China. My wish is I can have a voice to represent you in the government in one day. But for now, I suggest that you continue to do this. This is great, and the more you spread out information, the trueness to the community, to the people, especially the media, you just keep going. As you can see, we are getting good results. 200 million people in China are with the Communist Party. So I would like to have your help and support me to get in the government, and so to have a voice to represent you. And I will make a difference. I will try to make a difference for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you. And now, okay, we also have Leanne from the Libertarian Party here with us today. Thanks very much, Leanne, for being here. Would you like to say a few words or introduce yourself? It's optional. Okay, no pressure. Okay, I'll give you my mic and you can
Sorry, I was looking to get up and say anything. It's very sad to see what's happening and how it continues to go on. Can you hear me?
A little bit closer.
Yeah, it's very sad to see what's happening, how it can continue to go on. And I actually, my day job, I work in nursing, and I found out about this probably about 10 years ago, and it was around 2012, I think, and I was shocked when I first heard about this going on, that how they can get away with that sort of thing. It looks like there has been some pressure now put on the government where they're saying that they're not going to do it anymore, but I don't know, you can't trust them, obviously. There's, I don't know, I just think there should be more, maybe demonstrations or, like more broadcast about this sort of thing, so more people in Australia will talk about it. I just happened to find out about it through some other people that I work with through nursing who were Chinese, and so I think there's probably not enough people realise, and the more pressure we can put on Chinese government, the better. I attend a group which Libertarian Party in Guildford, and they talk about different things, and that's how I found out about today. But I'm glad to come, and it's re-emphasised, to me what's going on, and it makes me feel like, I need to do something too to help in any way I can. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to open up the floor to some questions. If anybody had a question that they would like, they can just pop their hand up, and John will be here to answer the questions.
Hi. I was going to ask whether, this practice of harvesting organs, from the prisoners is still happening today, but I think the end said that, I think the government saying that it's no longer happening. So I was just wondering also whether the same thing happened to the leaders as well too. And also, I know that the Australian government try to, take action or protest against the Chinese government for what they've done to the Uyghurs. I hope that the Australian government and also the Parliament are continue to do the same thing, because it's saw in the show that the American Parliament, the Congress there definitely did pass acts for protection of the Falun Gong. I'm not sure whether anything's done here in Australia.
You've got a lot of good points there that I can address. Look, it is still continuing, and just because, as in the film, just because Wong Jae-Koo, who used to be the vice, chairman of health department, just because he says, "Oh, now we've changed," that's David Mates is the international human rights lawyer in the film. He's saying no, it needs to be more than that. There's certain requirements that even the Transplant Society, which is the world governing body for transplants, requires traceability and all those things. It will be independently verified. China does nothing about that because nobody pressures them to do that. And Australia, America's trying. And the Falun Gong Protection Act, which is mentioned in the film, that was passed in the old house before the new government was formed, last year. So that lapses. It's like when any parliament changes and the new parliament is formed, and anything that hasn't been passed has to be resubmitted. So that Falun Gong Protection Act and the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act has been resubmitted in the House of Reps in the US, and it's currently in the Senate. And Marco Rubio, who's the Foreign Affairs, the Department of Secretary of State in the US, he said the Senate will try and push that through. So within the US government, there's a lot of understanding about this issue. They understand the Communist Party of China much better than the Australian Parliament does. That's got something to do, I think, with the history of people in America. A lot of people over many years, hundreds of years, have come from Europe and other communist countries. They understand communism much better. So it's still continuing, there's no doubt about that, unfortunately. But Australia is not doing enough. That's clear. David Mavis, who's in the film there, he's also coming to Australia again. This year he's been there, I don't know, he had 8 or 10 times since 2006. And there is an understanding within the Parliament, within some members of Parliament, that Australia can do more. We have what's called the Criminal Code Act. Now, that does not have an extraterritoriality component, which means if you've committed a crime of organ harvesting, participating, organising, getting someone to purchase their organ, if you participated in that and you're from Australia, even though it happened overseas, it's a crime. And it's similar to child abuse. Australia has a law that will catch you if you go to the Philippines and abuse children. Doesn't matter, you come back here, you've committed a crime under Australian law. Now, it should be the same for this. It's such a horrendous act, but it's not yet. So I hope everybody who's here, you can speak to your MP or other people you know, in the medical profession or any profession, that this is something basic that Australia can do. We don't even have traceability. Like if anyone goes overseas from Australia to have an organ transplanted in China, nobody knows. There's no official record of it. So how can you manage something if you can't measure it? The first thing is that. It's a basic thing. But even that wasn't supported. The Senator Dean Smith from WA tried to put that simple proposal through, but that was not agreed to by the current Labor government. So even that step hasn't been taken. So Australia is way behind the rest of the world in terms of what's being done to combat this issue, and it definitely is still continuing.
Peter, thanks for your question. Pass on to this gentleman over here.
May you explain a little bit what is being done at European Union level regarding this donor in China?
Yeah, good question. Now, European Union are much more understanding of this issue, and they have issued several, not laws, but all of the European Parliament has agreed and called on China to end this practice and for investigation to occur. So trying to make China be accountable. So they're doing something well, doing something good. It's more well known in Europe, I think, because of the history of communism and the abuses that have traditionally happened within European cities and their countries, I think.
I'm just going to say, I have signed petitions before about this. Does anyone know what's happened with those petitions, where they've gone and the results of them?
It depends on what the petition, if it was to the Australian Parliament, all of those petitions haven't been signed in May, and there's been tens of thousands of people who signed those petitions. They get submitted to the Australian Parliament. Now, you would hope when there's 100,000 or 200,000 signatures on a petition like this, it would influence parliamentary decisions to raise awareness about this issue, but no, it doesn't seem to have done that. But the heart that you've expressed in signing that petition is helping to raise awareness, so thank you for doing it.
Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this film. I just randomly found it on Facebook. I had, had previously signed petitions, and I'm really, really horrified to say that I think when I have mentioned something about Falun Dafa to my own elderly father, who watches a lot of YouTubes in Mandarin, that he seemed to think that Falun Dafa, well, what I would say is, it looks to me that he is quite brainwashed in terms of what Falun Dafa is, and he lives in Australia, and that is just really quite horrifying to me. But I just wanted to say that as a Chinese Australian, I have been regularly horrified at the lack of respect for human rights that the CCP actually do have, apart from what they've been doing to people, their own people in China with Falun Gong practitioners, the way the CCP, what they have done to the Tibetan people, the human rights abuses and everything with those people has been horrifying. And but what I wanted to mention is that here in Australia we feel safe. We like to feel safe that we are in a democratic country, but I believe that there are various insidious ways that the Chinese Communist Party is actually still infiltrating our life here in Australia. I have a Caucasian friend who wanted to learn Mandarin. He just wanted to learn Mandarin as a language. And he said he found it extremely difficult to find any Chinese language school that was teaching Mandarin that has not been infiltrated by the CCP. The way they want to teach Mandarin, you would just want to learn the language. It is conditional upon you sort of being they're keeping an eye on you, basically. Anyone who wants to learn Mandarin, even if it's just for travel, let alone to try and inform yourself more about what's really going on in China, it is horrifying to think that, with our democracy, that there are people taking advantage of the liberal life that we actually have and are potentially poised to cause more damage than we ever may realise. It is quite frightening. So I just wanted to say, I wondered what can we do apart from, say, signing petitions or, say, approaching politicians. Is there a way to access this film and show more people? What can we try and just why is something like this not being shown, or has it ever been shown on major broadcasters like SBS or ABC? Why isn't something like this being shown more often on screens?
I think there was something on Four Corners a few years back about this type of film.
Yeah. Look, you've raised many excellent points there, actually. So it's really helpful for everybody to take those on board and think about it. Just starting with your dad. I mean, that is the manifestation of the propaganda system that's so entrenched within the Communist Party system. You don't have to be in China to be bombarded by that. And that's their plan, that's their tactic. And they're effective at it. And, they control the media and the WeChats and the things that Chinese people in Australia can access. That's how and they're quite open about that actually. You know, the propaganda department is that all Chinese people, no matter where you are, you're ours. And that's how they're treated. And that's pretty shocking. You can't imagine that in Australia, you know, in a Western country. But that's the mentality. But also it's their greatest weakness, because the Communist Party is so afraid that they will be exposed. All these atrocities, what they've done to the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, the history of the Communist Party in China. I don't know if you've heard of Kuaidang in Chinese. Kuaidang is quitting the Communist Party. And that was triggered by a publication of the Epoch Times in November 2004 called the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party, Ping, in Chinese. Now, Falun Gong practitioners were crucial and instrumental in spreading that Ping throughout China. And that was basically, you know, going underneath and outside of the propaganda system and control to help Chinese people actually learn about the history. You know, what Mao Zedong did, the Great Leap Forward, all the different rights movements, the Cultural Revolution, all the system of how Chinese people have suffered because they don't get to hear their own history. They don't get to hear about Tiananmen Square massacre. It's just a system that controls the information that Chinese people can access. So the 9 commentaries, excellent, it's done a great job. It's still being spread in China by mostly Falun Gong practitioners, but other people, of course. And that has now, I think a friend mentioned 200 million have quit the Chinese Communist Party. Over 450 million people have withdrawn. They registered their withdrawal from the Communist Party, communist system. The young pioneers, which you go through it, if you were brought up in China, you go through in primary school, the youth brigade, in high school. It's all the system of brainwashing people from kids through teenage years and then into adulthood. It's very comprehensive. So Kuaidang is quitting the party. So there's a big movement, a big understanding amongst the Chinese people now. They're coming to understand the real history, what's happened to them. Because you can't step out of something like your dad. It's hard to step out of that unless you learn what's happened to me. So the grouping has been fantastic for that. And you mentioned so many other good points. I can't remember them all, but...
The Chinese language schools.
Oh, thank you.
I'll address a few things that you said. Sorry, what was your name?
My name's Susan.
Susan, thank you so much for speaking. Yes, there's actually something called Confucius Institute, actually, in the past, where they've actually disguised as language schools, and they go into high schools, elementary schools, and universities, in Canada as well, and they would go in there under the guise of teaching Chinese language, but they were all materials of propaganda, CCP propaganda, that they were teaching the children. So even though in the film it feels like far away, but it's very relevant to Australian society and to Western society, because China's here. The CCP has been here for years and years. They've never left. Actually, they've increased their infiltration into our society. And we don't realize that some of our freedoms are gradually being taken away. Even recently, actually, China has ramped up their overseas persecution and limiting the freedom of speech through transnational oppression. So I do encourage you to take this paper before you leave and have a read through it, because what we do in terms of even trying to raise awareness in Australia is being blocked by the Chinese government while we're in Australia. They're shutting us down while we're trying to book rooms. They somehow suddenly get canceled while we're trying to get into we're trying to speak to the media about, like your idea, Susan, about trying to run the films in major television, SBS or, ABC or Channel 9 or Channel 7, we're blocked. And because, unfortunately, the politicians, the Chinese officials, the CCP officials have their pockets in have their hands in their pockets for our politicians. So I think there is a lot you can do. I think signing petitions is just one way, but I think speaking to your local politicians and seeing what they can do, because they're the ones representing you, and even telling friends or family about, upcoming screenings. We do have another upcoming screening in the city, actually, in CBD. There's a poster back there, and David Matus, who's the human rights lawyer in the film, will be there. He's traveling from Canada to Australia. So even raising awareness, if you enjoy the film, to tell your family and friends or anybody you meet about upcoming film screenings. We've got one in Penrith. There's definitely ongoing things. I think raising awareness is the first step because the government's not going to really feel the incentive to do anything if the people of Australia don't think about that there is an issue. But if the people of Australia start to put pressure on our parliament, then it becomes something we can't ignore. So I do encourage everybody to read this paper, which does talk about more transnational oppression, about how people from, actually the Chinese government is now in Australia. Yes, Lucy.
Organizers for organizing this, but regarding the question that this lady raised, I really agree with a lot of points you shared. How much this Chinese community has been infiltrated and the CCP has been influenced this country. But I think this thing that many of us can do is share the information on the social media to let more people know, and also you can organize a private screening as well. I think. From what I heard, the story, what happened, this film has a big impact in Taiwan and in Korea. It's because people are sharing the news on the social media. So people talk about it, it really goes viral. Because you share information, you share the stories, and then, so then there's a lot of private screening happening, and they also show the film in the cinema. So there's actually churches organized group to go to see the film, and the schools organized group to see the film. And the clubs organize their members to go to see the film. It's really become big momentum. So people talk about it with each other. They talk to politicians, and because it's talked about so much on the social media, so the mass media also start to report and cover the story. So then that gives the pressure to the government, because people are asking what the government are doing about this. So I think that's all connected. But share the voice and get more voice out, and then share the news and let more people know about it. I think that forms a momentum to maybe push the government to do something. I think that would be probably something each of us can do. We all belong to either churches or clubs or hospitals. So the hospital organize the staff members to see the film as well. So we all belong to some groups. The clubs or organization, I think we can all share with people we know, and we can also organize private screenings for the people we know as well. So I'm sure the organizer will be happy to support if there's any private screening. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from somebody who hasn't asked before? We'll try to keep like one question per person there. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to speak? Oh, yes, hi.
I just want to know, would you have like a rough estimate of how many non-communist supporters would be in China? Like if you could estimate it, what would be the ratio of communist to non-communist?
Well, I think you'll find that nobody in China likes the Communist Party, but they're afraid of it, and they feel they're dependent on it, and that's how the system works, it can control people. But, there's over 450 million people who have withdrawn. That's an online submission they make to a website, and the things that they've understood something, their hearts change, they become aware of their own role, because the communists and the Communist Party only do these things because people comply. Doctors are doing these or cutting out organs. And we saw in the film some guy was too much, jumped off a building up doing 2,600 liver transplants. But people comply with that system. That's why it should be perpetuated. So really, 450 million people have within their heart expressed that withdrawal from the Communist Party. That's a big step. A little bit longer, and there won't be enough support within China for the communist system to continue. But basically, the question here, nobody likes communism, but they're afraid of it.
Sorry, what was your name?
Chiao.
Kiara, thanks for the question. So actually, it is a tough question because it is not you don't have a choice in China because you're living under totalitarian rule. So when you enter the first grade, year 1, you're forced to swear your allegiance to the Communist Party. You enter the party organization, and you wear a red handkerchief to indicate that you give your life to the Communist Party. And they pressure you to do that again in high school, and they pressure you to do that again in, when you find work. So basically, if you want to get a good career, you have to, if you want to get into a good school, if you want the teachers not to discriminate against you, you have to join the CCP. So that's why people have to secretly or use an alias to quit the CCP. So it's really hard because the Chinese people are oppressed under the CCP, it's hard to know who's for the Communist Party and who isn't. Because if you're openly against, you would probably be imprisoned or jailed and persecuted like the Falun Gong practitioner. So that's the conundrum, right? People might ask, why don't the Chinese people rise up and, speak up against these things? Because they see that's what's happened to the Falun Gong practitioners. Some of them, they don't want to be in the same boat. So the Chinese people require other countries and pressure from external areas as well, because they themselves are vulnerable and in danger with their lives, or being killed. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Thank you. Thanks very much. Any other questions? Anything at all? Anything about Falun Gong that you're not sure about? Or any questions about the persecution, the CCP? Yes?
I found out about the Batham by walking around Parramatta, and I got a leaflet, and that's how I found out about Batham. And I've signed quite a number of petitions. I've always signed up petitions. I'm sitting at the bus stop that come around, and they give me a leaflet. And I've read the pamphlets they've given me about the CCP and what they do. I've also seen Sen 3 times. I just seen Sen banned in China, but it's at the capital theatre in March. And the last time I seen it was the best Sen I've ever seen. I've seen 3 times, but this last time. It's brilliant, the performance and how they show the culture of China when it was banned, when it was the Communist Party. So I'm just wondering, the people are putting forward the problem of what's happening in China. So is it they're doing a good job in Australia? Is there any that can do a better job, or is the people they give you pamphlets, they give you petitions, and is there any stronger voice that they can do to do something better for this persecution?
That's another good question. Look, I think everybody who practices Falun Gong in Australia does what they can manage. So you find people in the street handing out flyers, they may be retired, they may not have good language skills, so they do what they can do. And others of those who speak, English well, we do go to MPs. We're all constantly having meetings and putting forums together and informing parliamentarians at state and federal level. So it's just a process. It's just dealing with a very effective and powerful entity that seeks to conceal all the atrocities it commits. And it does that very effectively. So it's an ongoing process. But just before we finish, I just want to come back to the question the gentleman here mentioned about the Uyghur people. The Uyghur people and Tibetans have been persecuted primarily because probably the Communist Party wants to control the land and the minerals since the 1950s and 60s. But the way they've been treating the Uyghur people over the last 5 years, or 2017 even, so about 8 years, is really based on the Falun Gong playbook. Because the CCP worked out how to get rid of Falun Gong practice, or try. And that organ harvesting is one of those solutions. And now they're applying that to the Uyghur people. And this is going to sound bizarre, but in Urumqi, which is the capital of East Turkestan, which is called Xinjiang in China, there is, at the airport, there's signage in Chinese and in Arabic. It says, this way for organ transplant. So they're actually tapping in to a halal version of organ transplants for the wealthy people in the Middle East. I mean, that's how shocking it is. But you can make big money doing that. So you can kill people and get rid of them that you don't want. There are problems for you, like honest people or Uyghur people and Tibetans who just ask for their own culture. Their culture is being obliterated. And that's the solution the Communist Party comes up with. Now, that's not promoted enough. People in the US, they do know about it. But you don't see it on the ABC here. You don't see it on SBS or commercial channels because of the CCP's influence, money, and infiltration into Australia. So all of these things, the CCP will collapse once more people know these atrocities are being committed. They're not just stories that you can wash over, right? Not just people's opinions. Me sitting here or people making a film. When people realise this is happening, then that's this big shift that will happen. So I just thought I should address that for you.
Thank you, John. Before we'll wrap up, I'll be taking another question or so, and I'll make some concluding remarks. Does anybody else have a question?
Speak quick. I work in adult education, and I have various cultural groups. I've never heard a single student mention Hong Kong, and I've worked for 35 years. I'm just wondering, and I've seen another movie a couple of years ago at uni. I just wonder whether, the adult education can be targeted, because in becoming aware of this atrocity, in other words. And then again, my second question is, this was organized here. I just came across it, like the lady back here, on Facebook, and I was actually looking at Parramatta Library, and what's available. How do you get even to this point? I know you've mentioned that, your bookings get cancelled. Is there a way you can actually target adult education? I don't know if there's a bigger voice or what.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that. I haven't thought about that, but it's certainly something we should look into.
Yeah, I think anyone who's actually interested in having a film at their workplace or in, we're welcome to work together with you, with our volunteers, and try to make that happen, because obviously we don't have connections in areas, and you have expertise that you can help us. And that makes a really big difference in the community when you can help us connect groups that we otherwise wouldn't reach. And because it's not easy when, for example, when we're on the street and trying to hand out pamphlets about the movie, but some Chinese people or some people might misunderstand because they've heard of propaganda that's against Falun Gong. So they might think that what they're going to see is actually trying to tell them something that they don't want to hear, right? They may not know what the truth is. So, yeah, I think today, organizer Alice, I think she just stepped out the door there. I'm sure she would love to have that. Or you can come to me or Adrian or John, and we would love to take down your details and, and see how we can work together. Because that's how we can make a difference in the community in Australia, right? And it can potentially save lives, because there have been successful cases of people overseas rescuing practitioners that were persecuted overseas in China and successfully helping them come as refugees. So not rescuing through going there physically, but putting pressure on the government there and writing, petitions and letters, and there have been successful. It can save lives.
In Great Britain, is the Liberal Labour Party know about this? Do they do anything about it in Great Britain? Because Great Britain is a great country.
I think this gentleman was asking Great Britain whether the Liberal Labour Party knows about this.
Great Britain is a great democracy. I just wonder if there's the Liberal and Labour Party know anything, do anything, or they know about it, or can they do anything?
Right. Well, there's definitely Falun Gong practitioners in Britain, in Great Britain, who are also doing some of the things that we're doing to try to raise awareness. So I can imagine they have also organized petitions and spoken to the government there, but sometimes it does fall on deaf ears, so there's no guarantee that after you've spoken to the government that things will happen, so you just gotta keep trying, right? And never give up. So, you know, that's what people did as well in the past, in history, when there were, go ahead, John.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there is a group, international, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, OPAC, that has members from the UK, Europe, Australia, US, South America, everywhere. So that's good. They're not representing the government, they're representing, exposing what's happening in China. So yes, the UK parliamentarians are aware of it. They recently had a transnational repression forum and report coming out of the human rights, the human rights group in the parliament in the UK. So the UK is aware of it, definitely.
Can they do anything specific more than they're doing now, or they're like America, they know about it, they're trying to do better than they're doing at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think that the crux of the problem there is that all Western countries have become enmeshed in the Chinese economy. So they're always balancing this trade versus human rights, or this fundamental decency as human beings, what we should uphold and what we should expose. So that's the crux of that at the moment. So every country's dealing with that, and the US probably because they feel more powerful to address it. They're still not openly addressing it with China. If the US did go down the path of exposing organ harvesting, that would be a big shift. So we can only hope and keep doing our best.
Thanks, John, for your answers today. We really appreciate it. I just want to thank everybody for attending today's event. We really appreciate it. Word of mouth goes very far as well, because sometimes, you know, things, you know, when you share it with friends or family, you know, they can really get a first-hand experience. You know, if you've experienced something or you've seen the film. So if you wanted to take materials to hand to friends and family or co-workers or anything like that, that does go a long way. We've also got an event coming up, the next one. It's at the Sydney Mechanics School of Arts at the HC Theatre. It's information's up at the back there. If you want to take a photo of that, forward it to anybody. That would also help us as well, raising awareness for the next screening there as well.
Yeah, so that will be the next screening. The details are posted at the back there with a QR code if you'd like to sign up. But David Matus will be there, the gentleman in the film, the human rights lawyer that has done a few decades of research on organ harvesting. So you can invite friends to the screening in the city. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for taking your time out of a long weekend. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your long weekend.
So the next one in Sydney, Saturday, 31st October. This is the QR code.